Well, good evening, Breckland, as they say. Good evening, Sam.
Hi, Ian, thank you.
Good, and welcome everybody to the second of our virtual town halls. My name's Ian Clarke. I'm hosting this evening, and I'm pleased to welcome Sam Chapman-Allen, the leader of Breckland Council, who's kindly offered to answer all the questions that I have and that you out there have. So we did one back in March, which I think we both survived just about, Sam.
Yeah, just about.
And we've decided to come back. So basically, my name's Ian Clarke. I've lived in Breckland all my life, and clearly, as you can tell, us a lot of years. And I work for the EDP. I'm now part of the news desk team, and I've been with the EDP 37 years. About half of that, just a bit of context, was as a news reporter, and a lot of that was actually spent covering Breckland, various meetings. So I'm old enough to remember when the Thetford Leisure Centre, the old one, burnt down and was then rebuilt, when council meetings were held in Attleborough, as well as just in Dereham. The plans were put in for this council office we're in now, were described as a white blancmange by one member in a planning meeting. And yes, I was around when the idea of buying Barn and Broom was first discussed. I have to get that one in, Sam. But just a little bit of the slightly serious context. I'm here completely independent. I'm not being paid, unfortunately, but really my role is to make sure your questions get answered, and we've had a good amount. Thanks for sending those in. We have got a live question and answer as well. So hopefully you'll all have access to the Q&A button. If you want to send a question, press that Q&A button. That will allow you to type the question in. And basically what we're going to be doing is asking and Sam answering various questions that have been sent in beforehand. And I've got a screen, so forgive me if I'm looking up there. And as questions come in, I'll be asking some of those as well. So it's a bit of a mix of pre-asked questions and on the note. Just say if you've got any problems, there are some staff from Breckland on hand to answer any technical questions. And basically, if you have one, email communications@breckland.gov.uk, and then the questions that you've got can then be asked on your behalf. I hope those introductions will make sense. Just really briefly, Sam, first of all, can you just remind us, in case you forgot from last time, if you're watching, how long you've been on Breckland and how long you've been the leader?
Yeah, thanks, Ian, and thanks to everyone who's joined us tonight. So I've been leader come up to my 7th year into 2026. I think I've been a councillor now. I think it's come up for about 16 years. Had a little small break in between, and prior to being the leader, I was deputy leader for a couple of years as well. So yeah, we're just under about 9 years within the executive, which forms the senior leadership from the political side on behalf of Breckland.
Okay, and why, Sam, do you think this evening is important?
So I'm never going to get the chance to go around to all of my town and parishes across the district. So there's 5 market towns, about 112 parishes, and 170,000 on residents. So this is just a really good opportunity where there is no Breckland involvement. It's purely down to you as that independent arbitrator to get those questions in, to hold me to account, but allow me the opportunity to explain what we do, why we do it, or if we're not doing something, why we're not doing it. Mm-hmm. And actually, we're not going to get through all the questions tonight. And just like last time back in March, we followed up with a detailed response to all of those questions. We'll do exactly the same. But this is a really good chance for me to try and connect with everybody across the district.
Yeah, and I should have said at the outset, none of the questions that have been asked have been shown to Sam or any of the Breckland team. So basically, it's all fresh. So yeah. So I guess it's quite important, just a bit of context. We've probably heard words like local government reorganisation, devolution, the future of Breckland. So as simply as you can, I know it's quite a hard thing to do when it's such a complicated issue, but can you just briefly put in context where we are with both of those things, devolution and local government reorganisation?
Okay, so devolution and LGR, local government organisation, are 2 separate things. So devolution is going to be the mayor, and that individual will be arriving into North and Suffolk, covering both of those county areas in May of next year. And their responsibility will pick up some big infrastructure projects and programmes, strategic plan across both the counties, housing, and then pick up other areas such as the skills agenda and everything else. They may pick up some other areas over the course, including things such as the police service and the fire and rescue service. but also how they're going to integrate the health. So the integrated care board, which was Norfolk and Suffolk had a separate one, that's now been amalgamated to a Norfolk and Suffolk, and that will sit within that space. That's a sort of devolved arena. And then for local government reorganisation, this is a direction from the government, which will in reality delete two-tier councils. So all the districts across Norfolk and the county council will disappear over the next couple of years. Time frame, we'll see the decision of what structure there'll be, whether that's a 1, 2 or 3. I'm a big fan of 3, trying to keep local government as local as possible. And that decision from government will be made about March or April time of next year. Okay. That then allows all the existing councils to get ready for the shadow elections of those new councils in May 2027. They'll then work through around how they're going to design their services, what their budget's going to be, what their council tax is going to be, and then the districts and the county council then disappear in May 2028.
Okay, so that's about 2.5 years or so. So Breckland won't exist from then. Almost whichever option we look at, it won't be a Breckland.
Yes, so as long as government continues with its really aggressive time frame for local government reorganisation, Breckland will disappear in 2028.
Okay, so just to be clear, whatever happens, we're going to have a bigger authority for this area than we've currently got.
Yeah, so we cover about 500 square miles, about 170,000 residents. We will become bigger. So most of my colleagues are 5 other districts across Norfolk, so that's Kings Lynn, North Norfolk, Broadland, Norwich, and Great Yarmouth, all think that actually the best model for us is 3 councils covering the whole of Norfolk. I've got a colleague in South Norfolk who thinks 2 is the answer, and the county council thinks 1. But for me, this is really about how we can deliver an improvement of services for residents across that locality, but trying to keep local government as local as possible. We know we're not perfect. No part of local government is perfect, but this hopefully will be an opportunity to redesign how we deliver those services for residents, and that's what really matters.
Okay, I mean, this is probably a whole evening on its own, and I'm sure as the process goes through, there'll be some really specific questions on this. But just very briefly, so if we went down a 3 route, if you chose and we went down that, what in terms of council tax, for instance, what would you anticipate the difference would be? I'm not talking about exact figures, but in broad terms, would people in Breckland pay more or less, about the same?
So Breckland is the lowest district council tax in the country. Fact, it's about £120 a year for a bandy. That's where we sort of work that average metrics on. Everywhere else in Norfolk, their council tax is substantially higher. So day 1, week 1, the council tax won't immediately jump up for Breckland residents, but it will begin to staircase, and it's called council tax harmonisation. That will happen, and Breckland's council tax will sadly, for the residents in our locality, have to rise to meet those other councils.
I mean, have you got any thought of whether it would double, go up by half? Have you got any thought at all?
Yeah, I have got private thoughts in, but the issue is that won't be for me to decide. That will be for that new council when they arrive in May 2027 in that shadow form to decide what the council tax is going to be and how they're going to staircase to get to that council tax harmonisation. So I don't want to set any hairs running. The only thing I can say with confidence is Breckland residents will see a substantial increase in their council tax because of local government reorganisation.
And if, for instance, it was a 1 or a 2, do you think that the council tax here would raise more if it was a 2 or a 1 rather than a 3, or not necessarily?
So I think our models that we submitted actually gave confidence because we can find greater efficiencies and how we deliver those services at a hyper local level, that we wouldn't have to increase council tax to the level which you would see under a single service for Norfolk or even a 2 for Norfolk. Because you're able to target that direct intervention where you need it and actually co-design those services, whether that's adults, children, housing, homelessness, etc., to that locality, rather than having a uniform service across the whole of that place. So for me, I still am really confident we will get a better financial outcome for residents if we have a model of 3 for those in Norfolk, for those in Breckland.
Okay. And as I said, we've got an interest in for our readers and for people to know, and I know you will have as well. So I'm sure as we go on, there'll be lots of opportunities to have these real sort of pin down of what it's going to mean. So I mean, things that people worry about in terms of what Breckland provides. So let's just take bin collections, for instance. Will people notice a difference if almost whatever, whether 1, 2 or 3? Will people notice difference in those sorts of services, do you think?
Not immediately. Other colleagues across the country have began to think about, because of the financial constraints, whether it's appropriate to do your general waste week 1 and then week 2 do your recycling. Breckland's view, and most of my colleagues across Norfolk, are not in that space. So I don't think for your day-to-day service you see from a waste collection perspective will change. Of course, food waste is coming in next year. Every house across the country being mandated to have a food waste collection. That's a direction from the government. That'll be weekly starting next May. But I'm confident that we'll be able to deliver foundations for that new council to inherit, where actually those services which matter to everybody won't change substantially. You may find your days your bin collecting do change. Yeah. You may find over the life of the new council, your colour of your bins may change, but the day-to-day service, absolutely. I hope that's
colours of bins. We can't change those, can we?
Well, we've got different colours of bins. That'll be one of the things I'm sure the new council will have.
People do say to me, you live out of Breckland, how can there be a green bin when it's not green waste?
And you were here when Breckland was one of the first to roll out those bins, and that was the colour we could get in bulk back in the day. Yeah. To deliver a wheeled service.
Well, you're going to get a first Breckland, you might get a different colour bin. There we are. The breaking news. Tomorrow's front page of the EDP is going to be changed as we speak. You actually answered one of the questions I was going to ask later on about food waste. So just be clear on that. So will the current recycling and general waste, and if you have one a green waste, they'll stay the same, will they? The food waste will be extra.
Yeah, so government have been really clear. Food waste has to come in for every residential and business property as of next year. So we're hoping to be able to start that in late summer across the whole of the district. That will be a weekly food waste collection. So you'll get a little caddy, which you'll live inside your kitchen or your home. Then you can just count that to your main caddy, and we will come around every week to collect that. We'll still be charging, as it is today, for Breckland for your garden waste. Yeah. That is a paid-for service, and every other week we'll come and collect your residual waste and your recycling. We're not changing how we're delivering that service. We're really proud to have that, what's called a commingle, where you can chuck everything in your recycle bin, and we will sort that when it gets to the recycling centre.
But food waste will be free?
Yeah, no change to that. That will be a statutory mandated service.
The new one will be free?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that'll be tea bags, spud peelings, energy carrots, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and part of the challenge for us is to make sure we're working with communities, having a really strong campaign. I know that you'll be supporting us at the EDP as to what can go in, what can't go in. Yeah. But actually, we should all be trying to reduce our food waste in the greatest terms anyway. So we want as little as possible to go into your food caddies as they roll out.
Okay. But you can't cut your grass and try and squeeze it in your food caddy. That won't quite work.
No.
Unless you've got a very little lawn.
No. That is not what we will be encouraging. Okay. Absolutely not.
I think that's really clear. But as you say, there'll be lots more information on that. I think probably the place that I've had most questions on in advance has been Dereham. So I'm actually going to split Dereham into two because there's been lots of questions. So just a couple of Dereham ones to kick off with. NR19, the hotel in the marketplace. Been lots of concern about that. There's actually been some figures just released which you may not yet have seen. So I'll tell you. Apparently, since 2020, there have been 249 police calls to NR19, the hotel. So just on that, what can you say to reassure people about all that's being done to keep that place safe and make sure that it's being used in the best way it can be?
So I guess there's three parts to that. One is around the type of individuals who are in there. There will be those who are private tenants to that landlord. There'll be those who we place in there through temporary accommodation. There'll be those who other councils place in to that property, and we've got no control over that. And there'll be those who the Ministry of Justice, the probation service, place within that. We've got a job to make sure that every part of the district is safe. And since this is landed on our radar back in the early spring of this year, we've been working really hard with the landlord and our colleagues across Norfolk to make sure that actually we're not saturating that property in Dereham, but also any property across the whole of Norfolk. We would encourage anybody, if they have antisocial behaviour, to make sure they report it so that ourselves, for our ASB team, but also Norfolk Police, are doing what they can do. There is no place for antisocial behaviour. The challenge for us as the housing authorities, we haven't got enough single bedroom units across the district, and our mindset is that we always want to try and house someone within Breckland so we can provide that wraparound service. Now, these individuals are people who are entitled, from Breckland's perspective, we place them, they're entitled to reside in Breckland. Our job is to try and find them their home and give them that security so that they can begin to rebuild their lives for whatever reason that may be. We will continue to work with that landlord just to give the residents of Dereham some confidence. That is a safe property. We have inspected it from a building safety perspective. We will continue to monitor it from our perspective to make sure that is compliant, and we will continue to work with Norfolk Police around the antisocial behaviour, and we'll continue to encourage our fellow colleagues across Norfolk not to place further burden on that property, but also the wider Dereham area.
Okay. Just moving across the top of the marketplace, the older Cash Indian restaurant been empty for 10 years. Been so many promises about what's going to be done, court action. We've done countless stories within the EDP about it. Still an eyesore, still looks an absolute mess. What can you say about what's happening with that?
So I think when we last spoke in March, I gave a commitment that we were going to do something. And just to say to the residents of Dereham and those who come into Dereham, a big apology. We have not been successful, and where I wanted us to be, we haven't been able to get there. For those who aren't aware, we were about to do the final part of legal action against the previous owner. That owner has subsequently sold the property again. That's moved on. We're now having to start that process all over again with its current owners. We've got a debt with the previous owner. We're now working through the legal system, ready to serve those papers on the current owner of the property. My hope is that we'll be able to force that property back into either market sale or some other type of sale provision to allow someone who wants to really care for it to bring it back into life. If that isn't the case, we have some other levers we can pull. But for those residents, I'm disappointed that I failed to get us to where we wanted to get to. I think if we had the previous owner still in the position, we would have completed that now, and that would have moved on. We would have had a better news story. But where we are tonight, the goalposts have changed. And for the residents, I'm sorry that we just haven't been able to achieve what I thought we'd be able to set out back in March.
Okay. So in terms of likely timescale, we're looking at what, weeks, months?
So I'm hoping that those legal papers have been served this side of Christmas.
Okay.
And then I'm hoping that we'll have heard, just like any type of position, the individual has the right to do what they need to do from a legal perspective. I think by Easter, we'll be in a position to confirm what's the next steps around whether the owner is going to take action to bring that back into life, or whether actually somebody else may do that.
Okay, thanks, Sam, for that. Just one other one on Dereham at this stage. Someone said about the old Wilko store in the High Street. Why can't it be used as a health centre, is what someone's question.
So that doesn't sit within the district council's responsibility. However, I know that many people in Dereham have some challenge around primary care, particularly with Topwood surgery closure. We continue to work with Dereham Action and others across the locality, and the local member of parliament and the integrated care board to understand what's their model for that delivery. If we can help nudge that along and bring Wilko's on board as a health drop-in centre, we absolutely will. That's not something which has landed on my radar I'm aware of, but we will look at any avenue to ensure that we're doing what we can within the health space, sits outside, but what we can do to help in partnership to bring an improvement for the residents of Dereham and the hinterland, but across the whole of Breckland as well.
Okay. I said we were going to take some live ones on the screen. So one that's come up here that someone sent in, there's a lot of disquiet in Attleborough at the moment involving some of your members, some of the Breckland members. Why don't you do anything about it is the question.
So regardless whether they sit as Conservatives or Labour, Independent or whoever, the leader of the council has no formal role in that process. We have a really clear standards process. In fact, the government has announced today further enhancement around councillors' behaviour in the code of conduct. That sits independently outside of mine. And I think that's right and proper as well, to show that there's some independent oversight around that. If any members of the public have any concerns about any members, whether that's a county or a district or even a parish or town level, please make sure you contact the monitoring officer of Breckland or the county council so that they can be looked into. But it's not something within my space I can directly can control.
I mean, there was a question that was sent in as well about the Nolan principles in terms, and that was related to Attleborough. There's been lots of different stories. And apparently in a recent meeting of Attleborough, which was recorded and is a matter of public, public knowledge and public record, Councillor Taylor, who's currently chairman of Breckland, said that the Nolan principles don't apply to a conversation she had with a member of the public about town business. I mean, and the question is, should councillors always adhere to the Nolan principles?
So I've got no jurisdiction over Ashborough Town Council, and that's something for them, those councillors and their staff to work through. Look, we're in public office and the public expect us to uphold those standards, and I expect every member to do that. Now, there will always be times in human nature where those standards may drop, and I think actually as long as we can understand the rationale behind it, then that may or may not be acceptable. But as I said, we've got a really clear standards process within the whole of local government, not just Breckland, but across the country. And if people are concerned that councillors' behaviour has fallen below that, whether it's around the Nolan principles or wider than that, please do make sure you raise that as a standards complaint with the relevant council.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure you would have expected car parking to be raised. I can't think that you would have expected anything else. So I'm just going to ask one specific question, which is a little bit longer, so I'll read it all, and then maybe we can just chat more generally about the overview of that car park. So the specific question, which is this: so Breckland Council has asked each town council to decide whether they will take on local car parks, but several have stated publicly that they have not had enough time or detail to complete due diligence before being asked to commit. These are significant financial and legal decisions. Why has Breckland chosen to proceed in a way that appears to limit the ability of town councils to make informed, responsible choices on behalf of their residents? Quite a long question.
Yeah, and that's fine. So trying to unpick it. Yeah. First of all, Breckland Council will not be charging for car parking as we move forward. That'll be for the new administration. The reason why we're moving as quickly as possible in is because Breckland's going to disappear. By 2028, we will no longer be here. And by 27, the new authority will have stood up. Mm-hmm. Let's be clear, we're the only council in Norfolk to not charge. Every other council charges for car parking. So back to your question around council tax, it would be, I believe, an intelligent position for me to say that if we were to retain car parks and they were to be inherited by the new unitary council, whether that's 3, 2 or 1, that car park charges will come in. And they've already got models in place, so they wouldn't necessarily need to go through what I think we did as some really detailed consultation. Where we are today and the conversation of the town councils is because when government makes the decision in early part of 2026 around the future of those structures, there's a risk that government can impose something called Section 34 notice on us, which stops councils disposing of any assets, entering into new contracts or any new financial big decisions which will impact the financial stability of those new councils. A couple of months down the road. So that's why we're trying to move as quickly as we can with the town councils to make sure they don't have to make the full decision, nuts and bolts, sign the dotted line, but to give us the confidence that they wish to make decisions around the future management. But the most important bit, this is about these car parks remaining in local positions where the local council can decide what's best for that town. And that's why when we went out to consult, every model was different. And this is why I want the town council to have that ability to decide what they should look like, whether they should charge or not. And so much that it's local decision makers, not what could be very distant decisions being made in Norwich, covering the whole of Norfolk.
So again, just in terms of the timescale, when would you expect, if the town councils take them on, when would that like to be, you think?
So that's the detail we've got to work through. Yeah. So all the councils responded really positively when we undertook our consultation engagement. We've been out to meet the town council on several occasions, both in public and privately, to talk through where we are, some of the costings in relation to that. Our initial offer was that we would lease all those car parks to the town councils. That was an option which worked for them, that's fine. We've now given all of the town councils 5 options for them to consider. Those options are not Breckland's options. They are options which we've had to work through the legal position of the Local Government Act and everything else like that. And each one of those town councils made a different decision around 1 or 2 preferred options. Some have gone out to consult, which has been great. They've had some really positive engagement. So I'm hopeful that sort of by the middle of next year, we're in a position to start to talk through the timeline of that transfer and any required sums or not, as the case may be, but there'll be for those individual towns to work with us around that.
And how would you sort of summarise the reaction you're getting at the moment from those councils?
So I think it's mixed. One is really grateful that we're being given the opportunity in those 5 options, because it's not us saying you pick this or you don't. It's 5 really clear options, but also the detailed consultation we did previously the ability for them to see that around some of the concerns from residents and businesses and those who visit the area, but also some of the financial modelling. And I think actually it's brought it to life that car parks are a big service. It's nearly £500,000 a year Breckland spends on car parks. And this isn't a cost shunting exercise. This is making sure that these car parks stay local, because I've got a clear mandate. I'm not now going to be charged for car parks as Breckland District Council, but there is a risk the new unitary council may do. So let's, if we can, make sure those decisions remain local, and the best people at the moment, because we're going to become a bit more distant, will be those local town councils.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that. Solar farms. I'm sure that's something that fills your mailbox, your inbox, and everything else. We've done countless stories on plans for new solar farms and everything else. So I guess we see a lot of opposition to the number of them, particularly the loss of farmland. So in terms of how do you as an planning authority balance the need for them, if the perceived needs there, to protecting farmland, and ultimately I guess it's probably down to the government, Ed Miliband, who's going to decide whether a lot of these go ahead. So how do you sort of balance the need for them with trying to protect farmland? Yeah,
absolutely. And for us as a district council, the agricultural sector and food security is really important. We employ a dedicated rural agri officer, and Phil supports the whole of that sector, particularly focused at the moment with the avian flu and supporting those in the poultry industry. But in relation to solar farms themselves, there are two parts. One is those which are decided locally by us as Breckland Council for our Breckland planning process. And most recently through the local plan, that's the plan which decides where all the houses are going to go over the next 20 years, employment site, open spaces, etc., etc. For the first time ever, we've had to deliver a policy around solar provision within that, renewable energies. We've never had to do that before, so we've got a dedicated policy within that. The second part of that is those larger scale applications, what's called national infrastructure, NSIPs, which you're absolutely right. Ed Miliband in London will decide where they are. I think for me, perversely, what we're seeing in Breckland at the moment is lots of smaller sites come together as a cluster to form the size and scale for them to be decided in Whitehall and Westminster, and that's absolutely not on. I don't think anybody would say that they don't think solar has a place, but those decisions need to be made locally by local councillors in their local planning committee, not being made in Whitehall and Westminster. And that's what our ask back to Ed is, but also to our two MPs, to make sure they're lobbying hard that NSIPs are not the thing for the future around renewable energy.
Okay. And probably just going back to where we started in terms of local government organisation, do you think in terms of the planning process, whether 1, 2 or 3 authorities will have a big difference in the way that planning applications such as that are decided?
We had you'll be aware, you and your paper covered a really big sensitive issue in Thetford recently around the Abbey estate. That was held at a planning committee where those individuals, those residents who were really concerned about it, had the chance to speak at that local planning committee. And those planning members supported the community with that decision. That's what local decision making and local government is all about, and therefore local democracy. And that's my fear, that when you get bigger local authorities moving further away from the people, the ability for them to make decisions informed by the public. Because I'm a resident of Breckland, those decisions impact me every single day. The same for my members who sit on the planning committee. We want to make the decisions which are going to be right for Breckland. And therefore, my concern is through local government organisation that become too distant. And that's why R3 offers a really hyper-local model, which governance criteria has allowed us to submit.
Yeah, and I didn't really ask about the 3. So would 3 broadly be East, West and Norwich? Crudely, would that be the case?
Yeah, so the submission is Kingsland and West Norfolk and Breckland as a one, with a little bit of Hingham being bolted on. Then it's South Norfolk, Broadland, Great Yarmouth and North Norfolk forms the east, and then a bit of a Greater Norwich sprawl outside its current settlement. So that's the offer for the 3.
And are they broadly, population-wise, about the same? I don't know exactly, but roughly.
Yeah, pretty much give and take within a margin, including the new government's housing target they've imposed on us. that overlay and our population trajectory, it allows that flexibility to pretty much bob on identical in the population figures.
Okay.
Sam, you mentioned
Bedford,
so I'll
actually move to that one now.
So in terms of the average date, did you say
that application from
flagship housing
was
turned
down,
planning
planning
meeting?
meeting?
There was some indication that there might be an appeal. Are you aware of whether an appeal has been made or is likely to be made?
So that sounds like a bit of a trying to cite. I've got no role in the planning process at all. That's down to the planning committee and the relevant officer. I'm not aware whether flagship will be lodging an appeal, but I think the most important part is that was heard in a planning committee within that locality, within Thetford, but all of the residents who wanted to speak, the local councillors and those concerned parties had the opportunity to represent themselves in a really democratic way and allowed those members of the planning committee to challenge the officers, but also to challenge the applicant, and they came to the decision which was the right decision on the day. And if they appeal it or not, we'll deal with that when we get there. But I think it just goes to show the importance of local councils, local planning committees, and democracy.
I mean, potentially, if they do appeal it, could that cost quite a lot of money to Breckland if it went all the way?
Yeah, appeals are not cheap things, but that absolutely does not influence the decision of any planning member. They are there absolutely to focus on, as a resident of Breckland, as the councillor for Breckland, what is the best decision within that application itself. If costs happen through the appeal process, they are lengthy things, we'll deal with that when we get there, but that doesn't impact or influence how we deal in determined plan applications.
Okay. And if it was refused, you talked about land supply and housing targets. I mean, I'm conscious that was a lot of houses planned there. So if it was refused, ultimately stopped, would that have an impact on the wider housing provision for Breckland?
Yeah, so we're in a really difficult position at the moment. In our housing numbers from government, that mandated figure has jumped substantially, and councils have to work within something called the 5-year housing land supply. That 5-year housing land supply is a bit of a safety blanket against aggressive development and speculative development which takes place outside of our sites we allocate in the local plan. That's why the local plan is really important. Just a bit of a plug, we're at the Reg 18, the consultation process in my local plan. So please, if you're watching tonight or you're watching on catch up, do go onto our website and look at the local plan, because it is the most important document we set for the future of the district. But in relation to that site as it stands and our housing numbers, we've lost our 5-year housing land supply. We're now below that figure. So we're at risk of applications happening across the district. Abbey Estate would have contributed to that figure, but it doesn't change the price of fish around how we determine and how we view plan applications. We take them on the application themselves, and just likewise for the planning committee, the 5-year housing land supply had no material consideration whether they approved it or refused it. They listened to the residents and those local councils on the day and made the decision for what they thought was right.
Okay, thanks. We've got 2 car parking queries. Just going back to that, and these are questions that come in live, so thanks for those that sent them in. Aldeburgh, according to the question, hasn't done a public consultation on car parks, but what unaffected councils have. Can Breckland ensure Aldeburgh will revisit to align with a fairer, more engaging approach adopted by the other towns? Do you want to do that one first, and there's a second one for that?
Yeah, it's not for me to tell any other part of local government how to do their job, and how each one of the town councils approach this process is completely down to them. In relation to Attleborough, if they've made a view that they wish to take on some car parks, but actually just want to look at the 5 options which the legals allowed us to present, because actually another option may be more favourable, I think we're quite open to that. The most important bit for me is that these car parks are retained in local ownership, with local councils determining what's the best type of model for them. So as long as I haven't overstepped the mark and what I'm able to say and commit us to something, as long as we can still speak to Attleborough around a different type of model, I think that's right and proper.
But would you be slightly concerned that some councils have gone out to talk to people and others haven't?
As I said, that's not my place. Each council would have approached it in a different way. I don't know what previous engagement they will have done, and they may have used the fantastic consultation, that really in-depth work we did, as some of that evidence and baseline around that. We spoke to hundreds and thousands of people over the course of that process, Ian, and the council in question may have decided to use that as their baseline for some of their assumptions, but it's not for me to comment. I think the most important thing is that these councils remain in local authority ownership and not owned and managed by some distant body.
Okay. The follow-up, why is it reasonable for Breckland to lease the car parks to town councils that, according to the question, is a double dipping cost for the public to have to cover?
Why they, so the lease options were £1 a year. I think most local authorities could fund that. There's some rules around it. We can't lease it at nil cost, and we're not allowed to do that as a local council. So we're going to lease them for £1 a year. Those decisions across the board were not taken. So we've parked those, if you pardon that expression. We've now moved on, and that's why we then took further legal advice, what the Local Government Act allows us to do, what Treasury allows us to do, etc. And that's why we came forward with 5 very, very different options. And those options were presented in detail to those town councils to consider what was the best type of thing for them to do.
So the idea of a double dipping costs, are you saying that's not the case because it's a £1?
From the leasing perspective, no, it wasn't. No, it was I think a financially manageable cost for those councils. In relation to where we move on, if people are referring to if we have to sell the car parks, those type of options, my hands are tied. That's not Sam saying for the district council, I'm going to sell them because I'm being perverse. That's what the law would allow me to do if the council wanted to do something with them. That's around redevelopment or the charging models, etc. So I'm working within what the Local Government Act and the law allows me to do, and that's why the 5 options are very different for sale, for nil cost transfer, etc., etc.
Okay. Piece of very topical news. I hope you saw the front of today's EDP. I'm sure that you are very well briefed on what we're reporting. We had a story on potential for various military bases, including West Toffs and Wretham, down in the south part of the district, potentially be used for asylum seekers being housed. 2 parts of that, Sam. First of all, is that something you're aware of? And what would your reaction be to places like that being used for housing asylum seekers?
So Breckland's got a really strong track record of supporting those members in the armed forces, their families and veterans. And those estates down at DIOs, Stanton, West Toss, playing a pivotal role supporting UK defence, and most recently supporting training those Ukrainian soldiers who are fighting that war in Ukraine against Russia. I'd be immensely concerned if the Ministry of Defence felt that training estate could be released to house asylum seekers. And actually, I think it's a poor policy decision that the government are moving away from hotels into using Ministry of Defence sites. I think actually they need to deal with some of those wider challenges around how they deal with processing and those wishing to come into the country. The most important thing for us as a local authority is that they engage with us. We've had no formal engagement from the Home Office or the Ministry of Defence in relation to those 2 sites. We've made contact. I know that both the MPs who have were quoted in the paper today have done exactly the same. The Home Office are meant to have a really robust process when they are thinking about housing any asylum seekers within your locality. As it stands today, no contact's been made. If there is, we will have to work through with them and key partners and agencies, whether it's right and proper to house them in any part of the district. But as it stands, no, those 2 sites aren't on our radar as coming forward.
And are there any other sites within Breckland on your radar?
No, not so far. We haven't had any contact. We get inquiries from members of the public that they've heard this hotel or these houses, and we always investigate and revert back to the resident, but also the local councils to reassure them. And that's why we've been really robust in our engagement with the Home Office, that you need to speak to us when you're ever considering sites so that we can understand the local intelligence and work with the local community. In reality, I can't stop it. There is no ability for me to do that within Breckland. The Home Office will do it if they wanted to do it. The most important thing is that we work in partnership. But today, we haven't had any requests from the Home Office.
Yeah, well, thanks for that clarity. That's really useful. Obviously, military bases and establishments are pretty big things at Breckland. We've talked about those. So Swan and Moor, I'm not talking about asylum seekers in relation to this, but obviously that's a base there's been a lot to talk about. For people that aren't particularly up to speed with what's happening, I think that's closing as a military base. Is that right? Is that what your understanding is?
Yeah, so the government previously, through the Strategic Defence Review, announced that they were doing an estate rationalisation, and very sadly, Robinson Barracks at Swanton Moor is one of those sites earmarked for closure. That should have been this side of 2030.
Okay.
It's now been pushed back. We're really hopeful that that site will be retained because it's so important to UK defence, and we're really proud to have them within not just the Deerham area, but also the Breckland, the Norfolk area as well.
What, so retain as a military base?
Yeah, and I know that the local MP, George Freeman, has lobbied the Secretary of State for Defence around that recently. We've made those representations as well. We've got to run these in parallel. One, we've got to make sure that we're saying to Defence, it's a strategic site, you need to keep it. You haven't found or built anywhere to rehouse these service personnel and their families, but also to make sure that if they do dispose of it, that we get the right outcome for that. Because the worst thing I would ever want for that is to fall into the hands of the Home Office for them to use it for something as a secure site, like we saw at Cllr. I want to make sure that actually if it is disposed of, then it's disposed of in partnership with the local community and we get the right outcome, whether that's housing, employment, education, I don't know, but making sure that we get to decide that locally.
So top priority for you would be to maintain it as a military base. Second would be a community use in terms of that, and then anything else probably wouldn't be acceptable for you.
Absolutely. The third option is not acceptable in any way, shape or form. If they are going to dispose of it, it was one of the sites it was being considered by Defence Infrastructure, DIO, for possible housing for our local plan. That's been discounted as a site immediately, but that may have the opportunity in the years to come to bring a couple of hundred houses forward, or it may not, but that will be for the new council to decide. Our preference absolutely is that retains as a military site with the British Army. We're really proud to have that within Breckland, and we hope that the current strategic defence review will allow that to stay in perpetuity.
And do you think, Sam, that because it was obviously an RAF base for many, many years, before it was then an army base, which has been there for what, 20 years, I suppose, do you think that will perhaps be in its favour, because it's been there for so long, maybe it would be seen as somewhat important to have as a base?
I have no idea how the civil servants in Whitehall do their estate rationalisation and begin to look at what they should keep and what they shouldn't. For us, though, it's a really prominent location. It serves a really strong purpose. I know that the individuals in there, servicemen and their families, are really grateful to be part of the Breckland community, and we're really proud of them. That's why we want them to stay.
Yeah, okay. And that's obviously a very apt thing to say. You've got your popular. I understand you had a remembrance event at the council today. So just in terms of that relationship, whether it be with, the USAF just over the border, whether it be with Swanton Moor, whether it be with Marham, whether it be with West Toss and Merton, what importance is there for you of all of these military links for Breckland?
Look, Breckland is really proud of its military connection. We've got lots of veterans across our workforce. And whether you're serving, you're a member of the service family, a veteran within the cadet forces, or just that wider supply chain, actually Norfolk's got a really strong history across the ages around UK defence, and it plays such an important role. We're proud to have one of the biggest military training areas in the country at Stanza. Thousands of service personnel going through there, making sure that they're operationally fit to protect the UK and our interests. But also RAF Marham, we've got a sliver of that airfield within the Breckland catchment. Okay. We're really proud to have Royal Air Force Marham retained, and actually it's a fighting force. A lot of those service personnel are currently on the carrier group around the Pacific at the moment, but also those wider areas of Swanton Morley. And then of course we've got hundreds of service personnel who live within our patch, and their spouses and their children live in the patch, and we're proud of that. We've got a really strong record. We've recently held a Veterans and an Armed Forces event over at Deerham Football Club, bringing in all of those partners to understand how can we do our job better. We're a gold member of the Armed Forces Covenant across Breckland, really proud of that status as well, but also supporting those individuals who do find themselves in challenging circumstance, whether they're serving or veterans or their families, to make sure that we as a council are delivering a service which they need in a really responsive way, particularly around things such as housing and homelessness.
You take a breath. 15 minutes we've got left, I'm told, so the time's flying. We're getting through these questions. There's a few more to go, so I'll allow you to take a sip of water, well deserved. Moving to a very different subject. Local land charge is not something that that we necessarily do a lot in terms of paper, but that's important for a lot of people. So one very specific question that we've been sent, and it's this. So why are local land charge searches in Breckland still taking up with 8 weeks to be returned when other districts in Norfolk are averaging 10 days, and in Essex, where the person who sent the question in recently moved from, they were completed in just 2 days? And the questioner says the ongoing delay has caused additional costs of renting and storage. So what's being done to address the backlog and improve turnaround times?
Yeah, so I think we spoke about it last time as well, Ian, and our target and how we're trying to deliver that within that time frame fell well short of what we expected, but more importantly to those residents who are moving within the district or to the district. And just say a big apology to those individuals. I know a lot of them was very sadly impacted. We've tried our best. We had a brand new system come on board. We had the change in the stamp duty. It was just a perfect storm, and we're still dealing with some of that backlog. We are still working through. I'm pleased to say we've made progress. We're now working at a month, so 4-week period to process those applications, but we still have further work to do. And if anybody is getting to that final edge when they need to deal with that completion sale, please do contact us directly at the council. We can expedite some of those land searches as they come forward. But apologies, it's not where I want the service to be, and I know for those who are in that service, it's not where they want it to be either. But for residents, I know how frustrating it is as well. But we have made progress, but we've still got more progress we need to make.
Okay, thanks for that.
We're going back to
Dereham.
Not
I live there.
We've got
a question about Dereham.
I mean, traffic is always
going
an
to be an issue in Dereham, particularly in the town centre.
And I'm conscious that a lot of
this isn't actually Breckland's jurisdiction,
but we have a lot of questions
in summarising around the buses, around the plans for the marketplace, around the gridlock, and how that's all sorted out. And what can you say, Sam, to that general malaise there is in Dereham town centre?
Yeah, so residents may be aware we launched something called the Future Breckland type work, and that was us putting our hand in our pocket and bringing in a team to come and help us support 5 individual plans for our market towns. And Dereham's Future Breckland plan has the market square and that sort of bus interchange and that connectivity and how vehicles move as one of its priorities. I'm really pleased to say that's progressing really well in partnership with Norfolk County Council to make sure that we rejig and change how the flow of traffic operates within that town centre. 2 parts. One is we need the money to be able to actually do the capital side, and we're hoping the mayor, when they arrive in Norfolk and Suffolk, will fund that. That's one of our big priorities to ask for, is around that reconfiguration around the bus interchange, public transport, and that town centre piece for Dereham. Is it going to resolve all the issues? It's not. I think that Dereham's a historical market town. We've got lots of houses, not just in Dereham, but across the district and the country. Many households now have 2 cars. That flow through just in every market town. When you get to that rush hour pinch point, it does feel really painful. For our local plan process and some of the sites which have come forward, the work we've done with Norfolk County Council has looked at that traffic flow and where call for sites could have any further adverse impact. So if you looked at the wider call for sites for Dereham, a lot of sites were discounted because that we're going to place an uncontrollable extra burden on the traffic movement and vehicle movement within Dereham itself without the ability to do any further big road improvements. But we work with the county council. But I think the takeaway is hopefully Dereham in the sort of later part of 2026 will see a really positive announcement with the mayor of Norfolk and Suffolk around direct investment around the bus interchange. So for anyone in Dereham, if you haven't seen the Future Breckland document for Dereham, please do look through. You helped design it. It wasn't Breckland owned. We just funded it. And actually it's got a really strong shopping list of the asks, but also the vision for what Dereham should look like.
Okay. And you talked about money. I mean, are we looking at tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, more than that? I mean, just in sort of general overview. So have you got any idea?
I've seen I think to bring the scheme forward from a sort of a design phase, nothing's ever cheap in local government or government as a whole. I think it's a couple of $100,000 just to do all the design work and the relevant planning to get it fit. If it's a sort of goal program, I think which colleagues in the public expect, it will be a low £1 million to deliver that type of scheme.
Yeah. You mentioned again about the mayor, and I think presumably this relationship there is ongoing between whatever we have, whether it's 1, 2 or 3 local councils and the mayor. Do you think that whoever the mayor is going to be very much, they're going to be under so much pressure, aren't they? Politically, geographically, and if they're from Suffolk, you think they might be looking that way if they're from Norfolk, look that way. I mean, how do you think, it's quite a broad question, it's going to be possible to get a good relationship that's going to keep everybody happy, but everybody able to, negotiate and consult and talk to them there?
So
job.
no, it's going to be a massive job, particularly when you roll in the blue light services, the fire and rescue, and the police, and everything which is being moved from the county council and the district up to that office around housing, strategic planning, skills, big infrastructure, etc., etc. Look, my view that we should have had a single mayor for Norfolk. Norfolk was big enough, 1 million people, one of the biggest counties in the country. I think we could have supported a single mayor.
But that ship's sailed, hasn't it?
That ship's gone. So we've got a single one for Norfolk and Suffolk. Their job is going to be working with all of those combined authorities. So whatever's left once the local government organisation happens, they will begin to form the combined authority, working with the mayor to deliver that. So regardless, there'll always be people from Norfolk sat around that table, that mayor, helping to drive their agenda forward, and hopefully, the right case, pull a lever, a handbrake, or be really difficult when they think that something isn't going the right way. But look, that's going to have to be shared across the whole of Norfolk and Suffolk. My job is to make sure that when that mayor arrives in May, that they've got a really clear perspective of what Breckland's challenges are, but also what the opportunities if they want to invest. So I'm hopeful that by the early part of next year, every mayoral candidate appearing in Norfolk and Suffolk, regardless of what political party they're under, will get the Breckland manifesto and that ask, making sure that they sign up to it so that we can have some really tangible positive outcomes. But that's why we're doing through that work, and that's why the future Breckland plan was so important, because we're match fit, ready to go. We now need to do that final bit, get those business cases ready so that they're shovel ready when the mayor arrives, and we can get the money out the door as quick as we can.
So when the new mayor starts, he or she gives you a call and says, "Right, Sam, I can grant you one wish of my new mayoral wand, my regional mayoral wand." What would be the one thing that you would want as a priority for that new mayor?
Crumbs, that's a really good question. That's a very good question. I think I would need to work through. There are 3 schemes we've got in good position submission across Breckland, and I would just need to make sure that £1 million delivered that across the piece. That's a bit of a political answer, but whether it's the digital media centre within Watton, whether it's around town centre bus interchange in Dean, whether it's around further education, higher education campus in Thetford, whether it's further heritage within Swafford, bringing that to life, and whether it's improvement to leisure and sports recreation facilities. There is so much, but it's not going to be for me to do that in isolation. I need to work with all of my Breckland councillors to make sure, if that was the ask, that we're all getting behind that single project and programme.
People like Sadiq Khan, Andy Burnham, mayors like that are obviously nationally recognised people. Do you think that the mayor for Norfolk and Suffolk will become a very recognised national figure?
Look, as much as they're a politician that have stood for election and everything else, we need to lift them out of the politics which we see on a day-to-day basis. And whether it's Sadiq Khan or Andy Burnham or Ben Houchin, they're above the local type politics and infighting, which sadly happens in our political system, because we want them to be out within the UK getting investment. We want them to be in the rest of the world getting people to come and invest and grow jobs in the economy within our locality. So I want them to be a really strong ambassador. And I think over time, actually Norfolk and Suffolk is the breadbasket for the United Kingdom, whether that's around food security, defence, imports and exports, or whether it's around energy as well. We've got so much to offer. I think within a short space of time, people are going to work out, actually, if you want to get anything done in the UK PLC, you're going to have to speak to the Mayor of Norfolk and Suffolk.
And we'll have to support Norwich rather than Ipswich.
Always.
So I've got to follow up on the housing stamp duty question. As the rollout didn't go well, says the question, what lessons have you learned on processes and IT projects?
Yeah, so previously we had a bespoke service which we had designed and built. it just come to the end of its life. That support staff who were external to us, there was no further on life support for that. We brought a off the shelf package which is being used by the councils, but actually we worked out that we had a solid gold service previously, and rightly or wrongly we brought a package which we thought was all singing or dancing. It wasn't quite there. So actually I think for us it's about managing expectations, but more importantly making sure that we're doing all that data cleanse in advance to make sure that when those systems and that overlay happens, that we can hit the ground running. But yeah, just on the land search, just a big apology again that we've fallen short of what you expect. I know that I'm disappointed, I know the team are disappointed, but we have made progress. We've just still got more work to do.
Okay, thank you. We've got 5 minutes left. So I've got one that's come in from Thetford. The question is, public drinking causing antisocial behaviour in adults continues to make parts of Thetford feel unsafe for children and families. Could you outline what practical steps your office will take to address this problem and ensure our town centre becomes a welcoming, safe space for everyone?
So back to the point earlier around Deering, we have no place for antisocial behaviour across any parts of our community. I'm really pleased that we're able to work in partnership with Thetford Town Council to deliver 2 safer street wardens. They're a great resource in Thetford, making sure that they're working with all of those licensed premises, but also the high street shops and businesses, and also the ability to move people on who are causing antisocial behaviour or are undertaking street drinking. We need to make sure that we're doing that in partnership with the police, and when it's appropriate, we're taking enforcement action. But sometimes if they need wider support, that we as the local council are placing our arms around them to get them the help and support they also require. We need to make sure we're working with those licensed premises, those shops or pubs, to make sure they understand their duty around serving people inappropriate quantities of alcohol, but also if they're intoxicated. And the final bit, we've got a really good position around our CCTV. Our CCTV cameras are recording 24 hours, 7 days a week. Norfolk Constabulary Control has access to them, and they're monitored as well at weekends. We need to make sure all of that's coming together. If anybody has any concerns around antisocial behaviour, it's a risk to life or an emergency, it's 999, but please make sure you report that on 101 so that we can follow it up, but also Norfolk Police can follow it up as well.
Okay. The final question that's been sent to me, I haven't got any more through. We've got a couple of minutes. Someone was asking, I won't go into it, was a very detailed question, basically about a taxi journey they'd had. But the overview question is, does Breckland Council determine taxi fares, or is that something that taxi firms would decide themselves?
No, so Breckland Council determines the taxi fares for both hackney cabs and private hire. Okay. There's a framework which government, as always, government sets a framework within that. But no, the local taxi company, if it's a hackney, the ability to hail one from the street, they won't determine those fees and charges. They are set by us as the local authority. And likewise, again, they're all licensed taxis. If anybody has any concerns around the driving standards or their safety in a taxi, please make sure you contact us so that we can investigate those individuals. We have a strong track record of making sure that the vast majority of our taxi drivers are professional people, and they're great. They do an absolute lifeline for so many, whether that's those individuals who don't drive, can no longer drive, but also for us when we need to go out and have recreational type activities. But there are sadly the very few who do allow themselves to have their standards to fall, whether that's around behaviour or even getting points on the licence, and we will revoke someone's taxi licence.
You've got those powers?
Absolutely, yeah. If they get points on their licence or we have complaints, we have a licensing panel which reviews that with the taxi licence holder themselves and our officers, and we have revoked licences. We'll continue to do so to make sure we're protecting the public.
So if someone, to outline that question, if someone thought they'd been ripped off, they could contact Breckland and that will be looked into?
Yeah, if they've got concerns that actually from a fares and charges perspective that they've lifted their leg or anything, please do let us know, because we need to make sure we're investigating that.
Okay. Well, whistle stop evening. Time's gone very quick. So can I just thank everybody who sent their questions in advance, and those that I don't think I missed any on the screen. So hopefully we've covered all the questions. Just a couple of things to say. What we've done this evening is going to be available. So if hopefully if you watched it, you might want to watch it again. If you know people who haven't seen it and want to, Breckland will be sharing it, and from the EDP's point of view, we'll be summarising the evening and also making people aware of how they can watch it back. One other thing as well, Sam, I think you might have said it, but I'll just reiterate it, that if anybody feels their question didn't get answered, they can contact me. My email was in the original press release was put out. They can contact Breckland, and any questions that haven't been answered, apologies if I missed any, will be passed on to the relevant officers or members to be looked at. So, Sam, thank you for your time. Thank you for your openness, and hopefully you've enjoyed it, haven't you?
Yeah, as much as I'm always nervous what questions you on behalf of the residents will pose. Actually, I think it's a really healthy thing to be able to hold me to account, and I hope we'll be back again in sort of 6-7 months time to do it again. But I think probably we'll be talking more about the current reorganisation then and the mayor's arrival.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That will be about the time when we're looking at 6 months or so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just finally, I mean, has a date been set for those mayoral elections? Do you know?
Yeah, it is. So May 2026, the elections.
Yeah, and there'll be and so people will go to the ballot box as they would if they were electing a councillor or an MP.
Yeah, exactly the same. So the only thing you may find different is that you'll get a bit of a leaflet of all the candidates, and that will be posted to every person on the electoral register.
Yeah,
and that will be arriving in the sort of early part of 2026 once all the candidates are confirmed in that February period. But
I'm presuming the main parties will have a candidate, and I guess there'll be some independents. Would you expect?
yeah, like there always is, and I think that's what makes British politics and democracy so healthy and so important. You'll get a variety of candidates, and I hope that all of them engage across their community. More importantly, that prospectus Breckland's pulling together really quickly, that actually they all sign up to delivering on behalf of Breckland's businesses and residents.
And then, so finally, when it comes to the new look councils, whether that be the 1, 2, or 3, there'll then be elections to elect members for those, I guess.
No, so whatever council, so to begin with, it will just be the county councils will form that combined authority till 26 to 27, and then we're expecting at 27, whatever the new councils are. After those new elections, they'll then form the new the new combined authority, working with the mayor across Norfolk and Suffolk.
Okay, we've got busy times ahead, haven't we?
Very busy times.
Yes. Sam, thanks so much, and thanks everyone for your questions and for tuning in. Thank you and good night.